Disney without a doubt has a massive amount of video game tie-ins for their films, but much like their competition at the theater, DreamWorks also slings out the shovelware as well for their films. Personally, I've always been more of a DreamWorks fan than a Disney fan, thanks to some amazing classic titles from DreamWorks like Shrek, Shrek 2, Shrek the Third, and Shrek Forever After. While DreamWorks are true works of dreams, and at times even nightmares, honestly one of their strongest franchises is How to Train Your Dragon, a touching story about a boy and his dragon, and I figured with the coming out just around the corner, I figured it would be a good time to revisit Hiccup and Toothless in this episode of Screen to Console.
The only problems are the pests.
Opening on the Isle of Berk with Hiccup's narration, we are pretty much dumped all the prerequisite information for the setting. It does set the stage pretty well and doesn't come off as like over-explaining. See, Berk has a pest problem, but unlike my chunky Frito-smelling food bag of a pest, Berk has to deal with dragons. Of course, dragons constantly raiding the village is going to leave a bad taste in the mouth of the Vikings, so dragons are enemy numero uno. Hiccup, our main character, is unlike his Viking kin, where they are big and strong. Hiccup is small and scrawny. While he wants to be a true Viking and dragon hunter, we also quickly see he's trying to come up with ways to overcome his hiccups, if you will. I mean, it also doesn't help that his father is the chief of the clan, and with Hiccup being his only son, he has some pretty big shoes to fill, literally. During a night when the village is being raided by dragons, Hiccup decides it's time for him to prove himself with one of his inventions, but it's a night when the elusive Night Fury is also in on the raid. Taking his shot, he believes he downed the Night Fury. Wandering off into the woods, Hiccup finds the dragon caught up in a net. With this being a chance to prove himself, the Night Fury accepts his fate, which leads to a moment of empathy from Hiccup, which leads to setting the Night Fury free. With the Night Fury trying to fly away, it's unfortunately grounded due to its injury. Hiccup tries to fix the problem, but in order to do so, he has to earn the Night Fury's trust, now aptly named Toothless because of his retractable teeth. What I love about this section of the film is that during Hiccup's time training Toothless, he's also a part of the class with the other youngling would-be dragon slayers, learning how to fight them. As we bounce back and forth, Hiccup really comes into his own. And what I mean by this is that Hiccup naturally takes to Toothless because he doesn't think like everyone else, despite wanting to be like them. He sees the vulnerability in these creatures, and that leads him to approach the situation with Toothless in a very different way, trying to earn his trust, to right his wrong, and to help the dragon fly again. During his time training to be a dragon slayer, he honestly really sucks at it, but during his time in class at the beginning, he's almost completely preoccupied by Toothless and trying to learn more about him. In time learning with Toothless, he also learns how to approach and deal with the dragons in a much different way, which leads him to becoming kind of a star of the class. Getting to know and tame Toothless leads to Hiccup becoming a dragon sayer instead of a dragon slayer. Both circumstances help Hiccup build and overcome the other, which changes his perspective, helping Hiccup find his way to finally succeed and his place at the village. While he impresses the villagers with his new abilities, his father and their war parties return from trying to destroy the dragon nest that they couldn't find. Stoic sees how the village looks up to Hiccup now and is overcome with pride that is shortly lived once he sees what Hiccup is doing with the dragons. This signifies the new way versus the old way, but in Stoic's anger and doubling down, he takes Toothless to lead the Vikings to the dragon's nest to end this once and for all. But since Toothless had already taken Hiccup to this nest once before, Hiccup knows what they're going to encounter, and with the help of the other kids, they band together to stop Stoic and to save them from a massive monster at the nest called the Red Death. Well, this big dragon awakens and starts his path of destruction while Hiccup is trying to help Toothless. The two fall off into the water, sinking to the bottom where Hiccup can't save Toothless. Stoic sees the errors of his ways and saves both of them, leaving the kids and Hiccup with their dragons to save the day and take out the Red Death. Coming full circle as defeating the Red Death, Toothless is the one to save Hiccup this time. Well, mostly. This comes back around to the narration at the beginning of the movie, but this time Hiccup talks about their new pets instead of pests. Honestly, this is a great film that even today still looks amazing with some truly cinematic shots. Like sure, there are some goofy designs, some slapstick, but also some really beautiful and epic moments that help blend the genres that the film is combining together perfectly. The swiftness to expertly bounce from being lighthearted to dramatic family drama to a large-scale epic action set piece is what makes the film stand out. Not to mention that it's a good moral foundation about being yourself, having the willingness to break the mold, and that not everything you don't understand is terrifying, and changing/understanding can be a good thing. It's something that can help you grow as a person. To put the pressure on our main character to live up to a pretty overinflated central figure like Stoic his father, the need to fill those shoes comes down to Hiccup just discovering himself, learning what that is, and how that will now fit with what was tradition. To take the violence of Vikings and to soften it takes what would be a rather cliche hero's journey and gives us a unique perspective, just like the film's main character. The symbol status of the Night Fury, a unique dragon in its own right, but one that remains feared, boosts our main character's pivot into leadership. Not only because is taming a dragon a first for this clan, but just seeing a Night Fury is also a first. So to tame a Night Fury would be more significant than just a normal dragon. Everything in the story works to build this character arc that works perfectly and precisely together. Hiccup is a very well developed character that stands out in the sea of animated protagonists, but the film also does an amazing job to set the stage that the film takes place on. Burke and its inhabitants, even if barely on screen, feel alive, and the characters feel alive thanks to the attention to detail and effort put into each character. Characters that can come off as one-dimensional like Snotlout, by the end feels like a fully fleshed out character. I personally just really love this film, and I've seen it a handful of times, and it's always a great watch. It's personally my favorite of the trilogy, but I'm curious to see what the video game is like. At this point, I don't know if I should be.
What the? Oh, hello! I thought you were crashing our party!
I played through the PS3 release of How to Train Your Dragon, and much like other tie-ins, it's on a bunch of other consoles as well. I actually had some high hopes for this one. Starting the game off choosing to play as either Hiccup or Astrid, I picked Hiccup, which led into an opening cutscene with Stoic, who seems just a little bit off. Like there is not a thought in that head. Stoic tells us that it's been a year since the end of the film, and Thor Thursday is coming up, so you need to train our dragon to enter the tournament. Working our way through the ranks until Thor Thursday, which will prove our Vikingness. That's it. That's the entire story. Welcome to Tutorial the Game. The game loop is exactly this. Train your dragon by doing tutorials. Afterwards, feed and heal your dragons. Fight in the tournament, unlock a new dragon, do one simple mission to unlock the next tournament, train the new dragon, and rinse and repeat 4 times until the final tournament. After you beat a tournament, you unlock a new dragon, which in order to level them up, you have to painstakingly take them through the tutorials to earn XP. The only way to earn XP is by doing tutorials or by doing challenges. What I mean by tutorials is the training camp, which would be a tutorial in any other game, and the challenges is a small collection of mini games that start off painfully slow and boring, but as you unlock the harder difficulties, it does become a little bit more fun. But like, how fun are they really? Were they only fun because the rest of the game is a boring slog grind fest? Like, would these challenges hold up if they were in a Mario Party game? And the answer is no, they would not. It is a speckle of difference that is just enough to break up the back-breaking monotony that is the main gameplay loop that makes the challenges seem like an oasis of fun than what they really are. There are side missions which are pretty much just like resource gathering to turn in to unlock a new recipe to care for your dragons. There's what is called wild fights, which is just a way to unlock dragons in arcade mode. Oh yeah, I forgot. This is a fighting game where you fight with your dragons in a 2.5D space completely stuck on the ground. Like, yeah, sure, I can mention how every combo is the same for every dragon, how fighting is slow, has sluggish response, invincible frames, and the AI spams the block, but all that could have been forgiven if there was some kind of interesting aerial combat or something, but nope. You ride on the back of dragons like they're glorified horses. The combat itself, like I said, isn't great. Sure, it's nice to finally do something besides training, but a lot of the training is combat training, so there's not too much difference here. The combat itself is just very shallow. Every combo works the same for every dragon, despite each dragon handling somewhat differently. The game keeps the combo input simple and the same across the board, but the dragons do have different attacks, lending each dragon to have a similar but different enough fighting style to not exactly be the same thing every time. I found myself with 4 dragons. Playing as Hiccup, I started with a Night Fury, not named Toothless by the way. Quick side tangent, but it is important. The main chunk of the game is literally, I mean literally, how to train your dragon. Sure, it's all the boring stuff, but through hours of the tutorial boot camp running back and forth collecting items to tame and heal your dragons, you'd think at bare minimum you could at least name your dragons? Like, come on, you want me to care about these pixelated reptiles all the way down to complete customization of the look of the dragons, but you won't let me name it? It seems like such a minor thing, but honestly at the end of the day, it's a pretty big thing that does keep a detachment from your dragons. Like, I can turn my Zippleback into a sea creature of any color, but I can't name him Tweedle, to which I just honestly ended up naming my 4 dragons on my own as some way to squeeze some kind of enjoyment and attachment out of this game, and they go Toothless the Night Fury, Tweedle the hideous Zippleback, Natty the deadly Natter, and Chubbs the Grunkle. Each dragon you can also spend attribute points on or skill points as you level them up that honestly did kind of make a difference in some cases, where pretty much full speed on Toothless just made him insanely overpowerful, or full fire on Tweedle was also overpowered. But with Natty and Chubbs, it really didn't seem to make that much of a difference. But there are some things that were weird that I noticed when I entered the training camp for the first time. After a long path up to the mountains, you finally reached an ancient place where Vikings used to train their dragons. What? The movie I watched, these Vikings hated dragons at first. There was no sign of them training before Hiccup. It's kind of what made Hiccup unique. But, long story short,
May the best Viking win!
so the movie is based on a book. I read the first book and honestly it sucked in my opinion. Here's the skinny on the book. The Viking of Berks train dragons. Hiccup is Stoic's son. He's small and little and a bit of a dragon nerd. The group of younglings go into a dragon's nest to find their dragon. Hiccup grabs a random dragon after the dragons attack them. It's a small dragon with no teeth, Toothless. It's not a Night Fury, it's a small runt plain Jane dragon. Hiccup can talk to dragons a la Kin Parseltongue, and Toothless is a sniveling little brat of a dragon. The entire book is Hiccup hopelessly trying to train Toothless. That leads up to a fight with the Green Death. But by the way, did I mention dragons can talk in this book? The dragons in this book definitely make grilled cheeses at night. Toothless does nothing to help. Spoiler, except for when at the last minute, Toothless helps save Hiccup from the Green Death for no reason other than a cliche turnaround, which apparently is a big enough deal to make up for the majority of the book where this reptile would have been more useful as a pair of boots. Honestly, I think the movie made the correct changes, and while I know the book is geared more toward kids, I personally thought it was really lame, misses a lot of the messaging of the film, and has zero weight like the film does. But why bring this up? Well, because the book is weirdly a part of the lore of the video game, or at least some things from the book, like the text on the training camp and how the story is structured around you learning to train your dragons for Thor Thursday, despite, being set a year after the film where Hiccup already kind of mastered dragons. It's not majority of the game. That would involve, the game trying to actually tell a compelling story or set you in a rich world, but it was enough to pull me out of the game and confuse me enough to read a book that I personally hated, especially compared to the movie. Book to screen gets a watch it. Now back to our regular scheduled programming. That was so stupid.
I admit, I had my doubts.
After finishing the story, we get Daddy Stoic's approval.
I'm proud of you, you know that. I hope you do.
We hit the credits that leave open a couple of options afterwards. We could, replay this 10-hour slogfest, of which I'm pretty positive like 8 hours of that was just tutorial gameplay loop to level up dragons. But we could do that again as Astrid, grind out some more of Hiccup's story to trophy hunt with little else to offer, or the arcade mode, which is nothing but these sluggish fights that introduces a couple of new dragons, but mainly just the same dragons with different skins, and that's pretty much it. I was teetering for a while on whether or not if I wanted to go for the platinum, and honestly, if I never play this game again, I'll be happy.
He's alive! You brought him back alive!
How to Train Your Dragon is a fantastic movie that has a sense of agelessness to it, where the game aged like spoiled milk. Look at the movie. There are so many awesome things they could have taken to make a great game. Even if they wanted to set the game after the movie as a pseudo sequel, we could have had like great flying sections, aerial battles. The grinding gameplay loop could have been fun if the island was bigger and add like a small farming simulator. Have a wider variation of training with your dragon dragons instead of a couple of mini games and repeat the same tutorial 4 times every time for 4 different dragons. There's actually some good bones here in the game that makes it much more frustrating, because if you actually took it seriously and developed the game rather than rushing out this dumpster fire, you could have had a pretty cool dragon training sim. Sure, the game didn't really have any problems running besides some like weird audio mixing or some frame rate stuttering in certain spots on the map, but the fighting is just kind of garbage and not worth the time, despite it trying to be the main draw of the game. After all, it's what all the hard work and training was building for, right? The game would have lent itself to having Thor Thursday be a major event with some fun challenges that were more thought out than the ones we actually got. It feels like such a missed opportunity. Comparing this to the other games I've covered so far, honestly, this is one of the worst games. Not because it doesn't work or something like that, but because it's the fact that this is such a missed opportunity. This game has a base first draft that seems pretty decent, but it never went further than that. It's not so bad that it becomes something enjoyable. It's kind of what I consider the worst you can be, and that is just boring. Now, there is a good chunk of dragon games out there, including a How to Train Your Dragon 2 that will probably be a future episode, so we'll see where they go from here. But for this one, it gets a pretty common rating around these parts. Watch it.
Well, you're quite the Viking warrior. Who knew? I admit, I had my doubts. But you conquered every challenge and obstacle. And it's, not easy for a Viking to say this out loud.
I'm gay.